What's up, everybody? Big Herc 916, getting down with Fresh Out. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You know how we do it over here. Go to freshoutseries.com, pick you up some merch, grab you a wig splitter t-shirt, and represent. I'm here with my man Cody, man extraordinaire, 23 years in the government, military. This guy has just a dictionary of information. I mean, we could talk for days, man. But I was just asking him, what does war really look like? Because see, a lot of you guys watch these movies, you get all excited, you know, you play Call of Duty, you think you're the man, you go outside, get your ass whooped. You know, you have no clue what war is really like. Cody, you know, breaking down like how you were saying, some of these guys are literally running around in flip-flops and a pistol, and you guys are just, you know, you got thousands of dollars worth of equipment on you. What does it look like to the average person who's never really been to the battlefield, man? And then, you know, from what you experience, and then like looking at what's going on, what you perceive in Ukraine.
Well, that's good stuff, because I think something just came out recently. They're kicking around a draft idea, right? They're kicking around, they're talking about maybe we need to activate selective service. Maybe it needs to be a partially volunteer force. I heard this latest course of action where it would be like a partially volunteer force, and if they didn't make their quota that year, then they would kick this draft off, right? And I think Americans have a Hollywoodized version of what war was like through the global war on terror, right? So in the global war on terror, I joined the Marine Corps in 1998. I graduated boot camp in the School of Infantry in 1999. I was an infantry guy. My job was to attack tanks, destroy fortifications and attack tanks. So my first combat deployment was in 2003, and so the invasion of Iraq. And essentially we just steamrolled over all of them, right? So tons of them basically surrendered, and that just kind of went down without it. Nobody actually really fought us tooth and nail to stop us from taking Iraq in 2003. So the combat was extremely light. I mean, we destroyed almost everything they had by the air by the time we rolled through on the ground, right? So now the insurgency starts, and now all your video game goes from easy, because the bad guys were wearing uniforms, to hard, because now the bad guys aren't wearing uniforms, right? And I think there's this popular opinion that we were just kicking ass all the time in the war on terror. And if that was the case, we wouldn't have lost. I mean, we were never really kicking ass all the time. We never really attrited them and killed them to the levels it would have took to get them to surrender. And that's how we allegedly won World War II, is we killed people until they unconditionally surrendered, right? Mm-hmm. So what combat looked like during the war on terror, I got 3 tours in Afghanistan, is, you know, what we would go up against would be like a squad of Taliban dudes. I don't think I've ever been in a fight with more than like 22 of these dudes at one time, because if they mass in chunks bigger than that, we're going to see them eventually, right? You can't get that much movement moving around without us picking it up with some sort of a technical surveillance device, right? So typically we would get in gunfights, and it would be like squad on squad paintball, right? You'd have like a squad of special ops dudes or a squad of Marines, and they'd be going up against like roughly a squad of Taliban. Typically, the Taliban start the ambush because they got the drop. It's their home territory, right? You go back to some big fob and eat ice cream and chicken wings every night, or you go back to some smaller fob and get yelled at for your white socks. These dudes are on the block. It'd be like if we rolled into a gang's block. They know where all the murder holes are. They know where all the little routes are and all this shit. And we're just tourists. We're coming in as tourists, right? So you fly in and you start taking fire, and you know, the shit hits the fan. The bullets start cracking by your head. And now, in the earlier days of Afghanistan, we would just bring in bombers. We would just try to pin them in place and we would bomb them, right? So once you get so effective at killing the enemy that way, for some reason they slow that shit down, and they start putting massive restrictions on how you can do that. So towards the end of it, you would have like 12 Afghans, anywhere from, you know, older teenagers, 17-year-olds, to maybe like a late 20s guy, right? They've got AK-47s, maybe like 3 magazines apiece. They maybe have an RPG or 2, and they maybe have a belt-fed machine gun. That's like their standard loadout, right? They're wearing flip-flops. Sometimes they got some running shoes on. They have no night vision. Their communications, they talk on what was called an ICOM radio. It's just it's like a Chinese company, I think, called ICOM. It was unencrypted. So they're just blabbing their mouth on an unencrypted radio, and we're listening to all of it. Right next to me, I got an interpreter being like, they're going to fire the RPG soon. And so we got them dead to rights. And kind of the point of this story is routinely, that squad of Taliban would tie up entire companies of Marines, entire companies of the fucking army. They would tie up entire SOF teams, right? And people are like, what the fuck? One of the things to take into consideration is there's no respawn. Like, we all hit the deck, we start taking fire. If I get up and do some John Wayne shit and take one in the head, there's no respawn, man. It's over. So essentially what you get is you start to get into a standoff shooting position at that point, where you're trying to maneuver on guys and you're crawling around, you're trying to drop bombs on folks. On our side, eventually we get airplanes stacked up to the fucking clouds to come pull our asses out of there, right? By bombing these dudes, or we might call in artillery. But that also points out the fact that just on a Marine Special Operations team like I was on, right? So you have roughly 18 dudes, depending on how many different types of dogs and cats they got with them, right? Like we might have some human intelligence guys with us. We might get plussed up, right? So you got roughly 18 dudes. We're carrying the best M4s money can buy, the best sights money can buy. I'm carrying magazines and magazines of ammo, hand grenades, rocket launchers. We got like a mortar with us. We have night vision. We can jam their communications. We can call in all this shit. And we're not just winning. We're not mopping them up. Like, they're fighting us to a fucking standstill. And because I don't want to die there, and nobody I'm fucking with wants to fucking die there, right? Like, so, I mean, we do get medals. I ran across about 125 yards of open ground to assault a building that I was getting shot at with a machine gun by, and you can see like the fucking round skipping off the dirt. And like, so we would get up and run towards the building, and we'd see the round skip off the dirt. We drop, we start returning fire. I got a real good buddy named Ben that had to remind me to use my grenade launcher because I was kind of like in the fucking tunnel vision at that point. He's like, hey, Cody, you want to use that grenade launcher? It's, so that is what a lot of the reality of the combat, at least in Afghanistan now. In some places like Iraq, they would strong point. In places like Fallujah, where shit actually got kind of real, you had to like blow buildings down, drive in with tractors and whatnot. But I think that what's important for the people to take away is the game is totally different in Ukraine and Russia. All right, we were fighting villagers. Russia is a peer adversary. There's this term that they like to throw around in the Department of Defense called near peer adversaries, peer adversaries. Since we're Americans, we like to pretend like we had no peers. So we say like, oh, it's a near peer adversary, and Russia and China really aren't as good as us. And I'm like, well, how are we good? We haven't won a war since World War II. So what are we judging this off of? But the Ukrainians are taking upwards of, I forgot the last number I heard, but we'll just say it's multiple hundreds of thousands of casualties, right? In the war on terror, they had this cute little game going on where they would keep our casualty levels low, right? So you weren't always seeing on the news how many of us were dying, right? Well, if we escalate, if we stay below the threshold of nuclear war and we escalate to hot armed conflict with a place like the Russians, right? We are going to sustain massive casualties. When people think of the military, they think of special operations. To the normal fucking bloke on the street, special operations is synonymous with the military. They think all of us are those dudes, Green Berets, SEALs, MARSOC Raiders. The fact of the matter is, the vast majority of the military are first-term dudes on their first 4 years.
Yeah.
And I texted a buddy of mine that only did 4 years. I was like, hey, bro, why'd you get out? He's like, because it fucking sucked and it was stupid. So the vast majority of those people in those 4 years are also fucking disgruntled. Like, in your regular infantry, you get some good training. You get enough training to locate, close with, and destroy the enemy by fire and maneuver, and to repel the enemy's assault by fire in close combat, right? But the Russians on the other side have the same abilities, right? So General Miley gave the opening statement for a joint base Norfolk. So NATO has a base on our soil. It's in fucking Norfolk. It's called Joint Base Norfolk. It's a NATO base. At the opening to this, there's all this pomp and circumstance, right? And we got these European dweebs sitting behind him. In his speech, he basically started calling out battles. The first thing he said is, this is the war, this is the base that the battle in the Atlantic is going to be fought from. And I'm like, word? And then he started calling out places like the Meuse-Argonne. I probably fucked that up. He started calling out World War I battlefields, World War II battlefields, D-Day, where we lost 5,000 people in a day, 6,000 people in a day. If we escalate to armed conflict with Russia or China, this place is going to stack up with body bags, right? They've got ballistic missiles. They've got aircraft. Well, not one. They've got bomber aircraft. They have an integrated strike package, which is the exact same as ours. So they have drones looking for people to call in artillery on. They have satellites. They can target us with satellites. They can jam our GPS. Like if you want to see a special operator, a special operations commander cry like a little girl with a skinned knee, jam that motherfucker's GPS. Because now crypto doesn't work. We can't program our radios. He can't get minute by minute details of where his guy is. His guys are to fucking micromanage him, man. Like before we would even be able to leave the wire in Afghanistan, we had to make sure our satellite communications were up and that the Tactical Operations Center or the Combat Operations Center knew exactly where the fuck we were, because that's some commander's ass if we just go off the res and start killing everybody, right? Our platoon literally got in trouble one time in Afghanistan because we moved a gun on a truck one hillside over that was outside of our operations box. We're getting engaged, just happened to be on the outside of the box they told us to go fight in that day. So we bump a truck over to the next hilltop over. A drone or fucking something seen it. It wasn't like we told anybody. And now we're getting our ass chewed for breaking the box. And I'm like, hey, my bad. I didn't see a box when I was there. I was just getting my ass shot off. I was trying to fix that. So our military, fresh off of getting fucking appropriately treated for the COVID pandemic, we'll just say, is now going to go. People are getting out left and fucking right. They're not like us. They're not GWAT veterans.
Yeah.
Right. We're the OGs of America right now as far as combat experience goes.
That's right.
The kids that are going to go face to face with the Russians, they got no combat time. Where'd they fight? And guys from my generation, I'm 45 now. We're all, I got nine deployments. Dudes in my circle, we're all mostly getting out. And even if we weren't getting out, we're not helping. We're not at the position that we would be leading those young guys forward, right? They probably have a dude that's been in for 6-7 years. If you think about combat over the last 6-7 years, maybe he saw some fighting in Mosul, maybe. The flip side of that is the Russians literally just fought through trench warfare in cities, man. You know what I'm saying? Like they've got their battle drill down. It's basically like an NFL team where we're gonna be sending our fucking JV dudes up against dudes who are fresh off of the fucking Super Bowl win.
Yeah.
They just took Bakhmut or whatever the fuck it was called. It's like, so that's basically the reality of combat. The stuff that you see, I mean, even things like Lone Survivor, man, that movie is a failure. It's a documentation of a failure. Those guys got compromised, got their asses kicked.
Yeah.
Almost all of them got smoked. No part of that was in the mission objective. That's a failure. But to turn shit into Shinola, they make a movie out of it and be like, oh, look how, it's a pathos argument. They're going after your feelings and be like, hey, look how heroic that actor is right there, dying on the fucking satellite phone. I'm like, that was against Taliban.
And you know what, when you say all that, and I'm thinking about like all the high tech, all this stuff, and some guys with bullshit phones and flip flops still were able to stand. What does that tell you? That there's hope. I'm not saying hope for the Taliban for their terrorism, but there's hope for America.
Right.
Because with flip flops and these guys were it was a shit show.
Right.
And it's like we could look back and like you said, 20 years. So, dude, when I hear that, and not to like criticize, you guys' ability to what you were doing, but you saying that was your adversary. Imagine if those guys had the same shit you had.
It would have been way worse. Our casualty numbers would have been way worse.
Hey man, it's just like war, how they paint it, man, and how these people, it's like, it's a whole nother situation. And it's like more, that's why I wanted you on the channel, because we need more people like you to share this conversation. Because for one, a lot of people, they run around here and they're screaming and, oh, this and that, and they're worried about things that have no relevancy on what goes on in the world. They have no idea how fortunate they are to be in a place where they've never had actual infantry on their homeland. Everything we see has been fought overseas.
Right.
They ain't ever seen people running through here really with some guerrilla warfare type shit, on top of rooftops, and shit is just ugly. Right. You know what I mean? Because like you said, you guys are going door to door. So it's just a different perspective, man. And I think a lot of people are very ungrateful. People who say, you know, I don't give a damn about America, blah, blah, blah. I think you're a piece of shit.
Right.
I think you're a piece of shit because I'm going to stand by my neighbor and I'm not going to bow down on my knees. I'm not letting nobody kick in my door. We're going to go, it's either me or you, you know, and that's the difference, man. So I value the service that the military has done. I value you guys who have served. I grew up in a military family. You know, had I not taken that route, I probably would have been in the military route because I had kind of like that mentality. I just, you know, I got caught up in more of the criminal side of things. But, you know, it's just, it's a lot of things that aren't being said that need to be said more. And I think, you know, coming from you who's actually been there, and the narrative they're pushing now with, you know, you got, you know, military guys, they got them dancing and doing RuPaul shows. I'm like, dude, this is not, that has no place in the military, man. That's cool for your private life, but come on, man.
Right. You're supposed to be anonymous in the military. That's a part of the service, right?
Yeah.
You're supposed to, yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
So it's just a wake-up call, man. I think, you know, and I wanted this to hopefully, you know, people in the comments will share some stuff, and other military guys, I get a lot reaching out, will kind of speak on this, man. But yeah, bro, I thank you for sharing your story. And like I said, shout out to every branch of the military, people who have served, given their life. I think all you guys, once you serve in the military, should be millionaires. I think everybody in the military, you come out, you know, you should be a millionaire. I don't understand how a guy from the military comes home and he has a hard time getting a job.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me, for real. You should be millionaires. All the people in Congress are.
Right.
They put their money in, they're able to make stock trades, and they're balling, and they're talking about what, you know, they're, you know, talking about the people. I mean, you guys should all be millionaires. You should be able to right now do what the hell you want to do, even though you are, but I'm saying you should be a millionaire. Your part, Aaron, everybody.
Yeah.
You know, that's my take on it.
I'd just like to leave, for the veterans that listen to this, I think the World War II generation and the Vietnam generation, when they returned, kind of set us up for failure, because those guys took all their experiences, which is very hard to come by, right? Like, a lot of civilians don't have the ability to see all that shit, and they bottled it down, man. They didn't talk about it. You know, granddad never talked about the big one, man. And then nobody ever talked about Vietnam. I mean, they were fighting in opium fields in Vietnam, just like I was fighting in opium fields in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So for the veterans out there, share your fucking story. Like, talk about how fucked up it was.
I'm kind of mad at my grandpa. He was old, but by the time he was so old, he couldn't really tell his story. He was telling me stuff about, like, you know, he was stationed in Greenland. He was in Portugal. He was over here. I'm like, damn, you know, why didn't you tell me these stories before? You know, I would love, what were you doing in Greenland? You know, what the hell were you doing over in Thailand? I mean, all these different places that you were, you know, all these different bases and experiences. And we don't get that OG talk no more. Right. We don't have that. I mean, most of these dads, you know, grandmothers are twerking. You know, grandpas is like, you know, weed heads. They don't have, where's the role model? There's no OGs.
Right.
Like, real hard, like, OG dude, you see him in the, you know, oh, that guy, he's Vietnam, but don't fuck, that's Big Tone, right? He's no joke, you know, he was in the war, he's got a little shrapnel on him, that guy kicks ass, you know, but now he's got this, you know, this is a no-nonsense, Mr. Tone's gonna bust your head, he's no joke.
Right.
We don't have those bust balls type dude. Now we gotta do with it. Goddamn, you know, got his hair dyed, he's some weirdo, you know,
right.
I mean, giving advice.
Even in the veteran community, you got things like the, like, I forgot, there's no reason to say any names, man, but you got guys that, like, basically promote the degeneracy of the type of shit that went down in the military. So they'll put on, like, tiny silk shorts on and go running around hiking and shit.
Come on, man. That's
disrespectful,
so I think man.
That's how they sideline the veteran community, man. And yeah, it's a trip, man. I really hope people really reach for venues to share their experience, share why you only did 4 years. It's weird that I have to come out of the military and feel like I'm under some sort of code of silence, like I'm gonna fucking dishonor what happened. I'm like, well, I did more in the military than most people that have ever served in the military. That's just the unfortunate facts. And I know it hurts people's feelings, but I got multiple medals with V's, multiple combat action ribbons. So I think it's hard for people in the military to hear a guy like me say this shit because they want the illusion. And I'm like, no, we need to be honest about what the fuck is going on around here. And yeah, man, I really appreciate the ability to share this stuff with you.
I thank you for coming on, man. Hey, Big Herc 916, getting down with Cody, fresh out. You tired of smelling like stanky butt? funky armpits, wash your ass. Go to FreshOutSeries.com and pick you up a bar of soap.